Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode today of the Cyber Security Recruiter podcast. I've got three special guests, and we're going to do a bit of a virtual roundtable. But before we get started, David, John, Brayden, how you doing, guys?
I'm doing great.
Good morning. Very well.
Yeah.
Cool. So, just to set the scene a bit for the listeners, we've got Brayden and we've got David. They are breaking into the industry at the more junior end of the market. So we're going to do a bit of a Q&A, bit of a chat, just let the listeners really earwig in and listen here to what we're talking about in terms of career growth, progressing, moving forward. And myself and my good friend, John Owen, who is also the Director of Security Analytics at Fulcrum Technology Solutions. We're going to do our very best, aren't we, John, to try and facilitate as much career growth as possible.
Exactly.
Cool, but maybe I'll come to David. I'll come to you first. I don't know if you want to start the questions off or point a question in mine or John or mine and John's direction, and we'll dive straight in and go from there, mate, if that's cool.
Yes, sir. What are some of the common mistakes you guys see that newer candidates who are trying to break into the cybersecurity industry? What do you see some common mistakes that they may be doing, or just some things that aren't as efficient or as effective to getting noticed, getting in, anything of that sort?
I'll jump in, man. The biggest thing is both sides of that, the fence of not doing enough or doing too much and experiencing burnout. You need to find that happy balance to get the pace to keep up with the industry, obviously. So there is some rigorous effort you need to put forth just to maintain a steady base there. But given that the breadth of everything's potential with cybersecurity in the industry, it's very common to grade out too wide, take on more than you can chew, right? I think the failure is finding that balance, and that's certainly common.
Cool. Yeah, I think if I really go at it, David, with the recruiter slant, I think when people are trying to break in, I think it's far too easy to almost do like this scattergun, spray and pray approach and just apply for anything and everything, almost with how ferocious that kind of junior end of the market can be for breaking into security because it is so much fun and so appealing. I think it's easy to get desensitized when you perhaps don't hear back from a job application at first and just almost keep apply, or easy apply. And I think going down that road can often not lead to the best results. I think the best results would be take more of a hyper personalized, tailored approach. So rather than applying for 100 jobs, maybe just apply for 10, but really connect with the founder on LinkedIn, really make sure that you're writing a very personalized note with the job description. Make sure your follow-up is sequenced. So there's 3, 4, 5 follow-ups, not in an annoying way. So there's a bit of gap left between them, but make sure these people are getting followed up with because everyone's mega busy. So the follow-up is paramount. But yeah, that would be one of my things for breaking in is really slowing down to speed up when it comes to applying for roles and applying for roles where there's a mutual gain, a gain for you and a gain for the employer, and really show that employer that you've given them some time, care, and attention, and you've not just used maybe AI or you've not just used like a copy and paste or an easy apply button to apply. You've really given it some thought and you really care.
Thank you both.
Cool. Brayden, we'll jump onto you, my friend, and let you ask your first question. Yeah.
So I'll say for me as a current high school student, looking out into this kind of pool of all of these people, and part of this just might be the visibility of things on social media, but imposter syndrome being a really big thing. How do you handle seeing these people that are doing ridiculous things and you feeling like you're not at that same level?
You going to go first, John?
I can. Well, honestly, imposter syndrome can be it's real, right? When you
Right.
look at where we go, the lifespan of a tier one analyst, they say is less than 8 months until you're promoted, right? So you either burn out or rise to top. I can't remember who was saying it, Joe, the last events I was at, but they're basically create your own persona. It's almost like if you've heard that, that adage of dress for the job you want, not the one you have type of thing, that will make you feel a little bit more comfortable in that.
Sure.
If you're looking to rise through the rungs, you're always going to be put in a position of learning these things. So you're not going to be hired or promoted in a position where, hey, yeah, you've done this for maybe 10 years. That's not really always the case. So I think honestly, doing as much due diligence as you can to prep for it, but frankly, you just gotta take the bull by the horns and run with it, but wrap yourself in all the support structure that cybersecurity could offer you, the community, colleagues you built and friends like that. That'll offset some of that discomfort. But at the end of the day, like for me, got a job to do, but overshadows things a lot. And honestly, just if you get along with the pace, kind of things just blow by. And then you're 6 months in, you're like, oh, I've already been doing this. And then recognize that kind of fact, right? That you've got a history that's led you into that particular position and kind of use that as a jumping off point, because that's the only way to really move up within the industry.
Sure. Awesome.
Thanks, John. I really like that, John, because what I was going to say, which is similar to what you said as well, which is almost channel that imposter syndrome into forward momentum and forward action. Because I think sometimes, Brayden, it never goes. Like I still get it now. I can remember one. I've got a few like real life stories I can give you on this as well. I can remember headhunting one particular guy, and I was trying to get hold of this chap for absolutely ages. Like I knew he was the one for this job. And anyway, eventually got this person on the phone. He was phenomenal, very highly skilled hacker, pen tester. And the amount of imposter syndrome that this particular person had, I couldn't believe it. And sometimes it's the more you realize you don't know. And I think sometimes if you have those feelings, just what I would say is don't worry. I think we all have them. I think the more, to John's point, again, I think the more you do something and the more you just act, the more comfortable you feel. I know when I first started the pod, I couldn't work for an hour before. I couldn't do anything for an hour after because I was decompressing. I was nervous before. And now it just like breezes through. I think it's really normal to have those things. And I think as well, you mentioned social and social media. Like social media makes everything look good all the time. And it's not always the case. And we often always only see the finished products. Another great example I can give you is, and he won't mind me saying because he said this on the podcast, but Justin, the CTO of Trusted Sec now, I think he said he got rejected 7 times when he was trying to break in and he was told he was never going to get in and stuff like that. So you hear all these stories, and Tim Meaden, the founder of Red Siege, he went on stage, did this public speaking thing, and it was meant to be like for an hour, and he basically read his speech out in 10 minutes because he was so nervous. Like all these stories you hear about people just completely making a complete hash of things at the start of their career. But it's the only way to learn. But yeah, I think some people get it more than others. But I think if you get it, I think kind of embrace it and channel it into forward momentum and forward energy. And then that's what people perceive as confidence.
To piggyback on that, Tom, if you go and look at any of those popular people you may be seeing on social media, right? Those multi-million, multi-billionaires, go look at their champion for success is going to be their Amazon, something like that. But dig in deeper and see how many times they've started businesses and fail. You look at things like Canva and Dropbox. Most recently, I saw a report. They got turned down by dozens and dozens of venture capital firms over 6+ years. And then now they have multi-billion-dollar things. So it's always just repositioning yourself that may even adapt some of that comfortability, right? Because you're like, hey, like you need to fail 100 times before you get the one winner.
Yeah, no, definitely, John. And it's like there's a lot of sayings like fail your way to success. I always think, by the way, the Americans are better at this than the British people. I think we've got this thing in the UK where we're always like really looking down at our nose when people fail. I always feel like in the US, you guys are better at it in a way. You embrace it more and do things bigger. But yeah, just don't let anyone tell you any different, Brayden. You're very rarely going to be phenomenal at something the first time you do it. And the more times you do something, the chances are that if you get those reps in, you tend to get better and better and better. And it's going to be difficult at first. It's bound to be. That's just how it is. I think as well, the compound effect, it's easy to look at someone 5-6 years down the line and go, how am I going to get to there? But it's these little baby steps you take, and eventually you do just get better and better, and it just clicks. But yeah, cool. Should we flip back to you, David? And did you want to ask us another question, my friend?
Yeah. From a recruitment perspective, Thomas, and then I guess John, from more of the hiring panel perspective, what have you gentlemen both seen are the most significant changes in maybe the past 2 to 4 years when it comes to hiring, whether it's skills, whether it's job volume, anything like that?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing more and more roles. I'm seeing a lot of roles, 1 or 2 roles being merged into one, sometimes even 3 roles being merged into one. So more at the senior end of the market, I'm seeing like the CISO and the CIO role definitely going into one. And I'm seeing a real desire for a well-rounded, really well-rounded skill set. So I think, how can I explain this to be helpful to you, David, and you, Brayden, and everyone else listening? I think having a well-rounded skill set, strengths in certain areas, definitely. I think the communication piece is becoming more and more important. I don't just mean speaking, written as well. An ability to articulate risk in a verbal and a written form is just such a underrated skill set that's probably not talked about much, although it is getting talked about more. I've got a client of mine who actually doesn't typically hire juniors, and he hired one recently because he was watching this particular guy on Reddit, and he just loved the way his words flowed online, and this person was documenting everything he did on Reddit, and this particular client of mine was following him, and he reached out and hired this particular individual. Yeah, I think to summarize, I think the more you can sharpen up your communication skills, the more you can have a real strong understanding of getting behind the tools. I think documenting your progress online and the personal branding piece is something that's going to become more and more valuable. I like to refer to that as making your resume 3D. So your GitHub repos are popping, you're active on Reddit, maybe something on LinkedIn, maybe start small and build up, but having an online presence, I think, is becoming bigger and bigger.
John?
Yeah, it definitely seems true. From my end, I see a little bit, definitely Tom, what you're speaking of. A lot of what I've experienced is things like, I see a lot of adaptations, things like cloud and, cloud security, clouding being more, expected entry level as well. So, build out of it previously. The other thing I've seen is, like Tom mentioned, is more differentiation across things like coding or different tool stacks. It's, if you were to consider, if you have hidden things that you can do, maybe one or two of those you have extreme depth of expertise on, but the rest you're working knowledge of. We're seeing more like adaptability to support those kind of roles, where we've seen like highly specific roles in the past. To Tom's point, they're generalizing more a little bit as certain products are blending and going back to more platform approach. And so just having one section thing isn't as valuable to business anymore as it is going a little bit wider, but still having a core skill set in a couple of primary things.
I like what you guys said, because from my perspective, I definitely experienced the same. I've always called it skills inflation, where companies and job postings are essentially requesting more and more, trickle down effect at the lower levels. So basically it's almost harder and harder to have that minimal baseline that you're like day one job ready or you're attractive to be interviewed. You have to learn more. There's more skills. There's more tools. More of them are expected at the lower levels. Like you guys mentioned, cloud is almost expected as a part of your tool stack, your skill set. I think PowerShell, Bash, Python is also one of those things where it's consistently being listed on more junior roles, that like 0 to 3 year experience mark. I'm seeing that consistency.
Yeah, no, it is, David. I think as well, David, and I'm sure we'll get on to kind of certifications and stuff like that in a minute, and what area of security to focus on and stuff like that. I think one thing that absolutely blows everything out of the park is getting some hands-on experience, whether that's paid or if you're in the position to do unpaid, however much you can do a week, if it's an hour a week or a day a week or 2 days a week. And I think the best way to get that is to try and approach smaller companies where you can get direct access to the directors, the founders, and try and get someone to give you a shot. It might be 100 or a 50 or even a 10 and 12 person company where you can just get in there with the founder. Maybe you meet them at a conference, maybe you connect on LinkedIn. But I think having that real life experience, because that hands-on experience is just phenomenal. The game totally changes when you've had hands-on experience from a hiring perspective and a demand for your skills perspective. And also, you'll just get a real read on what the market wants. If the market wants more well-rounded skill sets and you're actually working in a hands-on cybersecurity business, you're going to learn a more well-rounded skill set because that's what's going to be demanded. If it's something else that's coming in, you're probably going to learn something else because, again, you're actually doing it for real life. So I think there's a lot of smaller firms out there. I'm not saying it'll be a walk in the park and the first one you ping will just come back and say, yeah, I'll give you a shot. But I think if you can devise a list of maybe 50, 60 founders of smaller companies and then maybe in your local area and then work out how you're going to approach them, whether that be online or at a conference, I think that kind of approach, I don't think many people will be doing consistently. And I think it will give you a real edge to get some real life experience.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome.
Anyways, my friend. All right, Brayden, we'll shoot back over to you, buddy.
Yeah. So as like a current high school senior who's looking at college programs, like because, and I've talked to some professors about this, but cyber as a new kind of horizon for a lot of upcoming professionals and college students, like a lot of colleges are starting to have programs, but they're not necessarily very well accredited. They might just be doing it to get that enrollment quota. So what exactly do you think should be looked for when you're looking at college programs?
No, great question. I think the best thing you're looking from is what you're going to get as an outcome. Some of them will roll in things like certifications. I think that's probably one of the better tracks because you're hopefully getting the best of both worlds, right? You're getting an academic background, hopefully going into some of those maybe more specific mathematical and statistical courses that will really help you like spread wider faster, because without some of those like hard skills, it may be difficult. And if you have the backing of things like a fairly substantial, so I think some of them like kind of WGU has half dozen or something certs that you get out of it. You do get the best of both worlds. I know that some differentiated and major programs are whether you're going cybersecurity focused or whether it's named cybersecurity, but it's really like computer science with maybe some programming and networking laid on top of it. And that would be probably the biggest thing to key in on is trying to separate or identify how that college or institution is separating itself along those stacks. So you get what you want. If you want to go network and stuff like that, those are completely great. But I think that's maybe one of the observations I've made is a misconception from just a cybersecurity labeled program, but aren't actually doing any offensive, defensive tool sets or skills up or something like that. Then more focused on network. And I'll double down on that. I think the core computer networking skills is like core competency for being able to move into cybersecurity.
Of course, yeah.
As we see people develop curriculums and teaching statistics towards that, a lot of them are honestly like skipping that. They're moving straight into cybersecurity, but it's like trying to read a book and you don't know how to read English. You've got the content in front of you, but there's no way to actually understand it. And especially when you're talking more on the offensive sides, because how are you supposed to know how you can find the end on a piece of technology when you really have no idea what you're staring at? So
exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Do some research and try to connect the dots. Ask people on your tours or whatever you go, what tools they use, what industry partners, probably a big one, what industry partners that they partner with. Some institutions are doing a really great job. And back to Tom's point of getting hands-on, if you're able to leverage industry tools as part of that curriculum set, then that's like triple threat, right? So you got education, you've got certifications, and you've got hands-on stuff. You can bring all those directly to the workforce.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, John. Yeah, thanks, John. And yeah, Brandon, it is a good question because I can see why, not all colleges, but I can see why some colleges might want to say they've got a cybersecurity course or degree on their roster, because from a marketing perspective, it's probably pretty cool and pretty advertising for a lot of people. So yeah, I can see why you want to choose the right one. But I think the content will be really important, and having someone in the industry maybe reviewing the content. So if you know someone, like John, who is actually in the industry doing it, who's managing large groups of security folks, so they'll tell you straight away if that content is relevant, or even if someone who's still very much security engineering, hands on keyboard, ask them how relevant that material that is being specified in the course content is. I think another good one as well would be, who's teaching the course? Is it someone that was in the security game 5-10 years ago or a while ago, or is it someone who's actually, again, working in the industry right now, who's current, who's up to speed? They're the sort of things I would want to know. But yeah, I know you just mentioned there, John, about partnerships and stuff like that. That would be a massive one, because if there's internships or partnerships or essentially door opening mechanisms on that course whereby you can get a foothold on a big company or a well-known logo or something like that I think it's really worth paying for, because that really is like a really good networking opportunity. But yeah, I think to summarize, who's teaching you? Get someone like John to review the content and see how relevant it is, and then probably just have a look around and compare a few as well, and see what's across multiple options.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to me what you said about who's teaching the class, because this whole industry was built off of hobbyists and people tinkering around in their garages with routers and switches and old game consoles. And I think it's so cool because, the people that are really qualified to teach didn't go to school for this. So yeah, I remember I toured at Marshall University in West Virginia, and Dr. Brunny was talking to me about how, yeah, certain programs will just shuffle some business administration's teacher, some computer science teacher just over to a program just so that they have it, but they don't actually, you look at them and then they don't actually have any work experience or life experience doing cyber. So it's definitely something to keep out for.
Yeah, I think in security and cyber, it's just so relevant. If we were talking about wanting to go into finance and learn to be accountants, I'm sure a profit and loss and a balance sheet and margin and EBITDA and profit and revenue, that was all the same as it is 10 years ago as it is now. You know,
Right.
That stays the same. So
The
it's cool.
forms
I'm
don't
sure.
change, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure if a professor's been out of the finance game for 10 years and he's talking about a profit and loss sheet, I'm sure it's a balance sheet. I'm sure it was the same then as it is now. On the flip side,
Right.
I'd want to be taught by someone like John on security because I know John's in the thick of it all day, every day, managing this. You do really need someone that's current. And as time goes on, I think we're experiencing change now at such a rapid pace. Things are really,
Yeah,
it's
if you're not
exciting and
keeping
it's
up, you're
great.
already behind.
Exactly, yeah. And listen, it's exciting and it's great and it's exhilarating and all the rest of it. But it's you got to stay sharp these days because it's stimulating as hell, but it's moving quick, definitely.
Sure.
Two
Thanks.
things to look out for along your way. One that I definitely missed to note on is the NSA actually has a designation for Centers of Academic Excellence.
Oh yeah, CAE.
Exactly. So that's a good thing to identify because they not only have some mandates for things like outside of the classroom for outreach and supporting elements for education, but that's also a good point for honestly like industry dollars to be focused that way. The other thing to look for is it's backwards, but very supportive. At Tom's point, like if you're looking at long-term major educational institutions, like the tenured professor, frankly, in my opinion, it is going to be secondary to maybe an adjunct professor at a community day shifts for some large corporation and is doing that because they either like teaching or want to get back from here for whatever reason. You're getting that like actual boots on the ground, up to date thing where I think that the long-term senior professors may not just be in the best position to be able to support that just because pure structure, right? It's certainly valuable, but just something to consider in terms of what immediate value you can get from word of mouth.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. I'm enjoying this, guys. It's good. Before we started, I was like, God, how's it going to work? There's 4 of us. Like, we're all going to be. But it's actually flowing really nice, isn't it? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Cool. David, what's next, mate? What would you like to ask us next?
Yeah,
buddy?
piggybacking off of that previous question for the younger crowd, for the newer crowd, for maybe even a more middle-aged, older crowd who is transitioning from a different industry job field, and they're starting very green, both in IT and they want to get into cyber. What do you guys recommend as a blueprint? What are you guys seeing in terms of the college, the boot camp, the certifications, the self-study? What are you guys seeing is successful? What do you guys recommend? Pros and cons, things of that nature.
Cool. I think in terms of, sorry, John, I'll go first if that's all right, mate.
Go on, bro.
Yeah. I just think I might be answering this in a slightly different way, but I do just want to get this in. I think sometimes when people first come in, they see certain job titles like SOC analyst or pen tester, and I think whilst people can come in and land those jobs, I think they're quite difficult jobs to land when you've got no prior experience. That's like hacker, SOC analyst, security, they're like dream jobs. I think there's like a middle ground of where you can come in, I think particularly GRC, still earn phenomenal money, still learn a hell of a lot, still provide a very valuable service in and around the compliance section within security. And I think that's an easier a way to get into security. And I think it's a busy, hot section of the security market as well, like GRC, NIST 853, SOC 1, SOC 2, Type 1, Type 2, all these compliance areas, the regulations there globally. You could be working from America doing stuff for European companies or whatever it might be. It's maybe a slightly different way of answering that one, David, but I think for people coming in from outside the industry or brand new, I think coming in through that GRC route could be a much softer way or a nicer way to come in, and it's something that you have to get your communication good as well. You have to be able to articulate risk again in a verbal and a written form.
Yeah, no, hit it around the head. I think certainly some of the industry things have that same like barrier to entry of having technology focused and all that stuff. I think starting it from a policy perspective gets you a little bit distant so you can do more of an understanding of the lay of the land without getting like hands on keyboard or what have you like day one. Transitioning to something like a SOC team is also beneficial because you have shoulder experience with colleagues that you can maybe piggyback off. You're not just planted in a closet left to be your own success there, because again, transitioning with all of that is going to be maybe a little bit stressful. I think as part of the transition, looking into some of the like, you mentioned boot camps or try hack me, hack the box, anything. There's such a broad range of potential in cyber that doesn't have to do with coding or firewall tools or networking. You can use it, either move directly into something like team management without a lot of IT skills. So I don't know, there's a couple different ways you can position yourself, whether you want to go more technical or less technical. There's even like a whole sales side that we don't really touch on. It's almost completely non-technical, but at the end of the day, your understanding of capabilities, risk, how executives look to protect their organizations and what statistics and metrics matter to them. It is, and it's all cybersecurity. You're helping address those security risks or gaps or even compliance audits and assessments, without a total like non-technical foundation. So there's many different ways you can approach it.
On the sales side, thanks, John. And on the sales side, like there is always a demand for like sales engineer is like a really big one. And there's always a demand, by the way, like in a downturn, everyone wants a really good sales engineer. In an upturn, well, so it's economically immune in some ways. Like everyone wants a good sales guy or girl in a boom, and everyone wants one when the chips are down as well. So yeah, it's a good point on the sales. And I think just on the breaking in section as well, I think network is, without the obvious, like when we have a saying in recruitment, your network is your net worth, and who you know is everything, and conferences is huge, and getting yourself out there. And I think as well, just getting in this, sometimes I worry because remote working is pretty prevalent these days. Like in the era where I learned a lot, and I know you would have learned a lot, John, that would have been in the on-site days, and we probably learned a lot by being in the office, water cooler chat, having a chat on lunch break, even going for a drink after work going for a pint after work on a Friday. And you learn so much, and I think that's gone now, but it's not a problem. It's just you've just got to be conscious of it. So I think the more you can get amongst it and get out and get to conferences, you just never know where it will lead, and it will often lead to good things. You learn so much when you're with someone.
Yeah. And Tara, I think it's important. Maybe you take a pause real quick and Brayden, I want to ask you, I know we've been talking some terms like sales engineer and stuff. That terminology may not be something that's understood within the high school. If you heard the term sales engineer before?
It's actually, because of my program, like we have a system where we have industry mentors come in every month. So it's pretty great because since we're in the Cincinnati area, a whole bunch of Fortune 500 companies have their global headquarters in Cincinnati. So being 20 minutes away from there, it's pretty great. But yeah, we have all of these people from Fifth Third, US Bank, P&G. We have someone from Reddit that comes in, and I believe someone on the Fifth Third team is actually in that sales marketing area for that. Yeah. So I'm not very familiar, but I am aware that it is an option of stuff to go into.
Yeah.
I guess to sum it up for really quickly, it's obviously, if we're going to do something, you program your program with code or something like that. That's somebody's bought some project. I need this done. These firewalls written. So you'll hire an engineer, they'll go in there and do that kind of stuff. But how do you actually get there? How do you figure out that somebody has this problem that they need and connect the dots? And there's like a sales team that's meant to do that. And so there's the sales representative or account manager. That's a person that essentially, if you think of it in a car dealership, it's the guy that meets you outside for your car and asks you, hey, what are you looking to buy?
Right.
And then you may get turned over to a specialist. That's more like the sales engineer job. They're to talk about the technical details, requirements from the customer, and really help figure out what the problem should be. And then sometimes that gets passed off to what we call an implementation engineer or professional services to actually do that. So there is this kind of middle person in there that doesn't actually have to go get hands on keyboard, actually hit the buttons to do what needs to be done, but they have an understanding of what technology's out there, what functionality can be provided by different parts of technology or different vendors or combinations thereof, and then helps introduce that to the customer, explain, hey, we can fix that through this and this. And the customer, okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do that. And then they put together a little scope there that's connecting the dots between, I have a problem, how do we get to the solution and get somebody to do it for us?
Yeah.
So definitely a role that's like unheard of. I think realizing it at that level, unless you're lucky enough like Brayden to have such a program, that's awesome to hear that you guys are getting exposure to that. I think it's super important.
It is. And do you know what I would say to that as well, Brayden? Like look, a lot of people are doing this. I don't know, it'd be nice to hear from you, Brayden, but like these people coming in, like that from these like heavy hitting, like famous logos. I wonder how many people are taking their LinkedIn information or their handle or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not blind to the opportunity that it provides.
Yeah,
like, it's pretty cool.
definitely.
We've got some really awesome stuff down here. And, there are these, not going to say names, but there are these two guys that have come in since my sophomore year, and we're on a first name basis. It's
Good.
pretty cool. It's a wonderful opportunity to have those connections like already.
Yeah, good. I think you have full permission for the next few years to be like semi-annoying in terms of getting as much information off them as
you got anything
possible,
for me?
mate.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's interesting how small of the world the cybersecurity industry is. It's for such a large industry, the actual community is again much smaller than you suppose. And one person you'll see maybe at one company or something like that, you'll see in a different capacity within the next year or two pretty regularly.
Yeah, it is. And if you're in it for the long run, that makes a huge, I think it being small doesn't hinder opportunity. It creates, because everyone knows everyone. If you're doing the right thing for a sustained period of time, people just quickly connect the dots and go, yeah, she's cool, he's cool. The game gets a lot easier as the years go on. But cool. All right, Brayden, that was good, mate. Did we answer everything there, mate? Should we hop back onto David?
That was pretty good.
Yep.
Do you guys have opinions as for technical routes? Any opinions? I know this is a pretty hot topic. People have varying opinions and they go at it, but what do you guys see? College, bootcamp, cert, self-study, or should you do a combination? Or should you not do one at all? Anything?
I don't know. Fairly regularly in saying that whatever you do in that supportive element, bootcamp certification wise, the only reason anybody cares about it typically is how you're going to use it. So if you can connect the dots between, hey, I've done X certification because I want to do this, or have done this, or have a project on it, or something like that. Any company's hiring for the outcome, right? They're not hiring for the process or anything like that. They want a business outcome out of any ask. I think the big thing I've seen is in continuing with things like CompTIA and everything, like the base certification, EC Council, being very much up there in high regard. There's also a lot of other certifications that are becoming more and more relevant and almost more of a standard with some blue team courses. There's entry-level junior penetration tester courses, which can also some of those very quickly. So I think we've still got the standards, right? But there's such a wealth out there. But at the end of the day, regardless of anything you pick, be able to equate it to direct needs, support of yourself, how you're arming yourself to drive more value or get some better solution out when you're actually addressing company needs.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, it's a hot topic, David, and everyone's got an opinion on it. And if I'm sat on LinkedIn board and I just want to get a post to get a load of traction, I'll just say something controversial about certifications, and you can almost guarantee that everyone will jump on it, and everyone's got an opinion, and everyone's got a story about someone that's smashing it with certs, and everyone's got a mate who's got no certifications, but he or she is wildly successful, and it's really up in the air. I think on the certification piece, I think in general, I would say is like I don't think you're ever going to regret getting a certification. You're not going to get hired on certifications alone. I think as a recruiter or a hiring manager, it really helps you. If I speak to some of the bigger companies we deal with and I'm liaising with their internal teams, I know like having some good certifications will probably increase your chances of getting in front of them and then showcasing your technical ability and your communication skills. It is then your job there on after. I think getting a few certifications as well, as a recruiter, you're going to look at that and go, okay, this is a guy or girl that wants to learn, wants to move forward, interested in progression, can get something done, can see something through to the end, is committed. So it's what it signifies to a lot of recruiters is what certifications do. But yeah, I think on the certification piece, I think I think pick them wisely. I think the market's flooded with all kinds of certifications, some better than others. So pick some of the more recognized ones, depending on which subsection of security you're in. And then in terms of like boot camps and stuff like that, I would always really lean on to just getting some form of, I'm sure there's some phenomenal boot camps out there, but I think really lean towards getting that actual experience in a company. And this is, some people get annoyed on LinkedIn when I say this, but I honestly think doing it for free. And I know everyone's financial situation is different, but I always say whether it's a day a week, 2 hours a week, whatever it is, if you can just get that real life experience, I just think it counts for everything. I know from a hiring perspective, the game changes when you've got real life experience. It really does. It really, once you've done it, employers look at you in a different way.
It's an investment in yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Was that helpful, David?
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Cool.
John, if I could, I want to pose a question for Brayden.
Okay.
Sure.
What's that, sorry?
I was going to ask, from your perspective, what do you see as like topics, technologies, or anything out there in the tech world that, may excite you? How do you see them evolving in the future?
Oh, I like this question because I don't know. I don't want to say I'm assuming, but I'm not going to say AI. I'm actually going to say the opposite. I am super invested in and interested in the human aspects to everything. I'm actually considering some sort of psychology, sociology minor along with my stuff, because the way that as we move into increasingly digital spaces and increasingly all of these services are now cloud-based, and all of these services are social media and all of that stuff, and algorithms are influencing what people see. And I just think it's so interesting, the effect that it has both on us and then the effect that we have on it. I just think that keeping an eye out for that as the technology ramps up, it's only going to become more prevalent. Counterbalancing that with how are we choosing to interact with it? How are we making it interact with us is something that I'm very interested to see how that plays out.
Cool. Yeah, I like that answer, by the way, Brayden. It almost ties in like psychology with the communication piece, the interpersonal skills. I do think, mate, the value on all is just going to go. I just think it's going to go up and up. I think, and I think, as we said, we weren't going to talk about AI in this answer, but I'm going to have to. But I think as AI comes in more,
Sure.
I do think there'll be certain things that like I'm doing today, and I'm sure like John's, and that will just be done for us. And it's like the ability to explain to the client or the customer what's going on and why we've done that and what this tool's doing and how the actual tool works. The ability to actually be able to articulate that to a customer, to a teammate, to a client. I think that is just going to go up and up tenfold. I really do.
Yeah. And another part of that is like the, not regulatory, but like the governance structure of everything is also very interesting, as we're having the different governmental agencies and all of these things like NIST and NICE and all of that. Like it's very, as there's only more and more technology, there's only going to have to be more and more ways that we have to think about how we use it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Thanks, Brayden, mate.
Yeah, of course.
David, what's up next for us, mate?
How do you guys, from your guys' experience, what do you guys see is a big separator between the successful, the ones that break in, the high performers, versus the ones that get stuck in a wannabe, I'm still trying, I'm aspiring loop? What do you guys see is some of the biggest differences between those two different camps?
Cool. So it all goes back to workload, right? Everybody can get easily drowned in any toe you dip into security water. I think the best ones rise to the top because they're able to do things like focus on what will be benefiting them in 6 months to a year. So they've got goals in mind and kind of track to get there. Talking to focus on really important stuff and maybe not get distracted by things that would be less important for personal growth. But that means time management, task management, communication skills, those kind of things all wrap into how you're able to keep up with things while you're actually maintaining your own base of education skills up and everything like that across hard and soft skills. That's probably the biggest thing. Honestly, having things like communication skills are super important because those will be the one thing they introduce you into third parties and other portions outside of technical infrastructure that could help you along the way.
Yeah, I agree, John. I think as well, like I think like your life can go in sprints as well, and you've got to be aware of burnout, and there has to be a certain element of balance and making sure things sustainable. Having said that, though, there is times in your life where I do think you've got to work in certain sprints. There's times where like you've perhaps got to go into some kind of not monk mode, but you've got to go into that mode where, listen, I'm on a very steep growth trajectory here. This is a really important time of my career. I need to push a little bit hard, not forever, but maybe I need to do a bit on Saturday morning, or maybe I need to do a bit of studying, maybe late, maybe some people could do that 5 nights a week. Maybe for some people, 1 or 2 nights a week is great. But I think knowing that there'll be a period where if you do double down and push, maybe where other people aren't, I think if you can do that in this kind of really important stage of your career, I think you can really reap the rewards later down the line. I think the compound effect to that is absolutely massive as well. I'll just name a couple of previous shows. Eric Cabadus founded a firm in New York called Include Security. They just do pen testing. And I said to Eric, what separated you apart in your early days of your career? And he said this on the show. He said every Saturday morning, he used to say to his girlfriend or his wife at the time, I'm just out of the game for this first 2 hours of a Saturday. And he just used to go and just study intensely for a couple of hours every Saturday morning. And the compound effect of that over months and months, or maybe a couple of years, was huge on his career progression. Going back to sprints, I'm going to name drop a bit, but I'll just do it anyway. But the founder of SpectreOps, he was on the pod, but not released that one yet. I said to him, how did you get ahead? And he used that sprint analogy. He said, look, there was times, Tom, where I was probably doing too much. I was pushing myself to my limits, really going for it. Then I'd go through a phase of maybe really cruising for 4 or 5 weeks. Then I'd go back into a sprint. And he said the compound effect of that really enabled him to push ahead and get further along than maybe some others did. So yeah, I think having these little techniques, compound effect's huge, by the way. Half an hour, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day of extra intensity on something you've never learned before, or a Saturday morning for even half an hour or an hour. I think that done consistently over a period of time, I think it makes a huge difference.
When I talk to my team, Tom, you put it really well. I talk to them about iterative progress. Everybody has personal lives and families and other things going on that obviously impact our ability to execute immediately. And so you have to go through those ebbs and flows of things. But the best indicator for me from a metrics perspective is ensuring that every step you're taking, as short as it may be, is forward, right? It may not be you're taking the huge leaps this week in whatever sprint you've broken that down into. You'll make a quarter step, but that's a quarter step previously you had before. And to Tom's point, a lot of quarter steps over time equals so much more than trying to smash everything and maybe hitting that burnout wall. And so having that ability to know, hey, I know some people talked about it in their homes. Hey, if you got a scale of 10, maybe today you're an 8. And so you're able to do a little bit more, but next week you're going to be a 4. So you got to pull back a little bit. Just know, hey, I'm still moving forward, and you just take those iterative actions to your betterment. That's the real progression. You just know that it's a long-term game, right? You don't need to smash it all out of the park this weekend. I know guys that learn Java in a weekend. So if you've got that ability to crunch there, are you going to do that every weekend? Absolutely not. But if you got the ability, take advantage of it and take those bigger steps so you can accommodate sometimes you can't really have that much focus or time on your hands should things go up.
Relate this to being a security engineer or a SOC analyst or whatever it is, but they maybe get off a little bit slower, but they're in it for the long run. Like you say, John, they're in it for all the right reasons and they just chip away. And from an employer's perspective, like we've got people on our team now, like we've got one particular member of staff. She'll know, if she listens to this, she'll know which one I'm talking about. And she started off a bit slow. And I told her now she's picking things up. I said to her, you started off slow, but now you're really grasping it. And she's like really coming to your own. And I don't know if you're the same, John, but like when you see someone trying so hard, and you know that they really want it, even if they don't get it, but they show up every day, they're committed, they're on point. Like that sort of attitude it's infectious. As a manager or an owner, you just can't help but really want to help that individual. And I think having that kind of mentality, I just think it gets you everywhere. It really does.
Yeah, if they're doing that through struggles, imagine what they're doing during successes. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. And also it goes back to all those things like when things are going really well, it's great, but you probably learn more when it's going bad. Like you said, if you're really pushing and grinding, when things are going, I know from my own career, like when things are going great, you probably start I think you can start giving yourself a bit too much credit when things are going great and maybe get a bit too harsh on yourself when things are going bad. But I think you probably learn the most when you're up against it. You really have to step up and up your game. So yeah, it's not always all bad when it's going bad, although it is nicer when it's going good.
Appreciate the sunny days without the rainy ones. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right, guys. Listen, we're flying up to an hour, but we've still got a little bit of time left. I'll come back to you, Brayden. Have you got anything else you wanted to run by me and John, my friend?
Earlier, I forget which one of you had mentioned when you said something about the hack the box, try hack me, that kind of stuff. And it was because doing those kind of competition style things is what has propelled me personally to learn more on my own. But do you see those things like really being taken seriously in the job, like application and like in the interview, those like hobby on your own type things?
Yeah, for sure. Even that sometimes above some of the base courses or certifications, because we play with those ourselves, but we know at the end of the day, you're problem solving. You got to do some research. You probably don't know, what it is that you're tackling on day one. So it's a great differentiator because you are truly hands-on keyboard, especially if you're looking for either the defensive or offensive side of things from penetration testing standpoint or malware analysis or anything along those lines. Yeah, definitely focus on hands-on coursework when you're doing any sort of certification. Those would definitely have more weight, or at least in my mind, from a hiring manager perspective, than some of these more like paper or theoretically based. Because again, my team specifically, I need people that can get out there and actually do the things that they're being asked of. And that's certainly what's more important for my success metrics.
Awesome. Interesting.
Yeah, I think Brayden as well. I think a head of pen testing would probably be quite worried if you weren't smashing hack the box, try hack me, and port with the web. They genuinely would, mate. They really would. Like, one of the things we do on our screening of everyone is what you're doing before work and what you're doing after work. Just because you're the best this year doesn't mean you're going to be the best next year, and that's at the very senior end of the market. So yeah, I think absolutely, definitely. Also, as well, we talked about the psychology piece and the interpersonal piece. I think this weaves back into it quite nicely because if you're on an interview and you're like absolutely smashing hack the box, and you get into that interview and that particular manager is also doing something very similar to you on Hack the Box, that's just going to be like an instant icebreaker, dark down report. Yeah. It's just going to get the interview off to an absolutely rocking start. So I think there's multiple, but there's the obvious benefits, which are it ups your technical abilities and stuff like that. But I think there's other benefits in terms of building relationships and having a chat. And these questions come up a lot in interviews. What's your home lab like? How invested in your home lab? Talking about building a home lab without a budget or building one with a budget, and all these types of things I think are on there. Employers are really interested to know what you're doing out of work and really see that raw passion. Brayden, do you follow Tyler on the, and same for you, David, do you follow Tyler Ramsby on?
I can't say that I do.
Okay, follow him. Yeah, he's been on the show. Yeah, he's been on twice. But he's got a big following on YouTube now. And so there's Patrick Gorman, he's InfoSec Pat, he's been on the pod. And then there's Tyler Ramsby, and they both do anything and everything they possibly can to help people breaking into, in particular, offensive security. But yeah, for everyone listening, please check them out as well. But yeah, they do loads. They talk about everything. Tyler does a lot with the Hack the Box. That's why I mentioned it, because I think he's got a volunteering role within Hack the Box now, where he actually moderates the course content and stuff for Hack the Box. But yeah, no, check him out. You'll have hours of fun watching him on YouTube. He's quite charismatic, so you'll enjoy watching him. All right, guys. Well, maybe one last one from you, David, as we come up to the hour, if that works for you, David.
Yeah, a technical one, a fun one, I think, too, though. John, do you think you could walk us through one of the most challenging incidents / breaches, obviously without revealing any PII, but any of the most challenging or incidents or breaches your team's ever encountered? And how did you and your team react?
Great question. I would actually talk about this one a lot. It was when I was really early in my career. So I guess I was lucky to have this sort of trial by fire. I was working for local government agency at the time. And long story short, it made it to some news locally to number one trending on Reddit, which ended up getting some of the eyes from Anonymous and some other wannabe people had some grievances and started taking out those grievances on the local county government systems. It was weird because unlike most of my things, when I'm like alerted from a ticket or something, some email or something like that, this came from an email from Redditor at reddit.com, which you usually don't see alerting us. But at the end of the day, it was about a week of back in the day, we had to manually look at Cisco firewall walls just showing on the street. So me and my colleague would take shifts and just, scraping IP addresses. That would interesting, cool, look it up, and then maybe filter that over to the FBI that was helping us out at the time. But I tell a story because it was not only a struggle to have 24 hours eyes on glass and stuff, but fun things because we went up to the courthouse and every single one of the printers and fax machines was littered with paper covering the floors because they were getting hit with so much stuff. They would run over it and just literally litter people's offices. One morning went to go respond, go make sure we were unplugging certain things. So it was an all out thing, but certainly one of like the best all around experiences because I got to look at networking, containment, investigation, threat response, how to actually work with government agencies and do that sort of information sharing since it was a government entity at the time. It's certainly a lot of fun, a lot of long nights, but that's the world we live in is that you'll have regular day to day and then sometime you'll get hit and the next 3 days are completely gone. But I guess it goes back to when you are searching for employers, have those fun conversations because hopefully they'll allow you flexibility that as you get pulled into an incident or something like that, they give you time on the back end to recover and not force you straight back in your 8 to 5 or something like that. And that's one of those fun, flexible job work experience that we get to work until 4 in the morning. But yeah, I don't want to see you tomorrow. Don't get your sleep. Yeah, I'll see you on Monday type of thing. Yeah.
That's a good piece you mentioned at the end. Yeah, because I remember like the July CrowdStrike event. Yeah, dude.
Oh boy.
Was up at 5 a.m. in the office, long day. And then basically the next day they were like, because we remediated that day of, they were like, all right, we don't want to see you guys tomorrow. I do like that you mentioned that there is some balance there. Yeah.
Man, if only it could have taken our school Chromebooks out and wouldn't have to have come in. Oh man, that's the problem with having non-Windows devices is that they aren't vulnerable to that.
I'm glad you asked that question, David. John, come in. That's one way to hike up your career progression, John. You've come in like early stages of your career, FBI, courthouse, printers going off. That's one way to learn. Throw you in at the deep end.
Earlier. Yeah, the next year I was corresponding with Attorney General Greg Abbott at the time because of some FOIA requests that we got in. It was fun. I had to school myself up on the very lacking cybersecurity laws and enforcement that we had at the time to be able to use. So that was probably one of my most eventful and educational opportunities was didn't get it, spinning all the way back around. Super duper small team. So we were responsible for everything. So if you're looking for how to get that broad spectrum of experience, don't look for the Fortune 500s. You'll be small fish in a big pond. Go get a couple of years of experience at somewhere where you're going to be responsible for everything from servers, infrastructure, phone systems, those kind of things. So you can see how things are connected, how people operate, and you really use that to your best ability. Get that like ace or killing your own skills.
No, listen, guys, Brayden, John, David, this has been really good. Like I said, I was a little bit like, when we were talking about John, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. But like this 4 of us is just flowed so well. We've made the job of my team that will be editing this really easy because I don't think there's much to do.
Awesome.
I'm glad we can do this.
Yeah. I am, it's good. And John, thank you as well, because I know you've really logistically brought this together for all 4 of us here and for the listeners for when this goes out to the community. Thanks to you as well, John. Really, like I'm always really busy but then when you come in here, it's almost like therapy for me as well. Like I'm talking and I'm learning stuff off all 3. Like thank you. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. And for all listeners, please continue to support Next Gen Cyber Ed. It allows us to do fun things like this and honestly learn from people like David and Braden and maybe get a chance to retire someday. Hey, Tom. Replace us in the future.
You never know. You never know. We'd be bored, John. We'd be bored.
I know.
Cool. All right, guys. David, John, Braden. Thanks, guys. And really nice to see you all.